Well, lovely to meet you. I'll be the 287,000th woman to tell you that you changed my life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so nice to hear. Honestly, it's what I dreamed of. It's like what I wanted from the beginning. So it means a lot still. For the 287,000th time, it still gets to me.
Okay, well that's something that's very interesting. So when you were starting out your musical career that you didn't necessarily think was going to be a career, I don't know. Um you were recording tapes in your bedroom and that leading to signing to Matador and all those elements. When you were making those preliminary recordings, were you thinking about touching other women, other people in that way, or was it for yourself?
You know, the girly sound tapes that I did in my bedroom on a 4 track, I think a Tascam, that was really for myself. And I was very much more free with what I said and what I did than I normally would have been if I thought people were going to listen to it. I was I was cannibalizing existing songs. I was saying crazy stuff, writing songs about Elvis coming back to life, all this kind of stuff that then I drew from to make Exile in Guyville, which I knew would be heard by other people.
So at this point, 30 years on, there's still such deep admiration for this album, but there's also evidence all around us of the continuing influence it's having on a new generation of artists. What's it like to see yourself, your work reflected in people like, say, Speedy Ortiz or Snail Mail? I believe Snail Mail started their work doing a Liz Phair cover band, um, which is amazing. Um, what does it feel like to see your work in others?
It's pretty incredible. It's humbling, but it's also really rewarding. Like I said, when I was coming up, I felt like there were no women in the music business, or even in college when like the bands, I went to a college that had a music conservatory attached to it. So bands were everywhere on campus. They were mostly guys. And so being fearful and feeling like a weirdo for a long time just made me want more women in music. So to hear that my lonely voice from decades ago meant something to young women who are thinking about putting their music out, it's incredibly rewarding.
So going back to the album itself, if we could, I know that at the time when it came out, word got around quickly that it was a response to the Rolling Stones' Exile in Guyville, Exile on Main Street.
Hey, I'm winning. No.
um, so there have been different thoughts and theories around that it was a song by song, or it was just actually using that as a jumping off point for an imaginary dialogue with the male perspective in that album. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more specifically? What role did Exile and Main Street have in Exile and Guyville?
Sure. I really used Exile on Main Street as a template because I was coming from college. So I was like, I don't know how to make an album. What's the best album ever made? It can teach me. So I sort of took that album, and every time Mick would be singing about a woman, I put myself in that woman's perspective. So I was having a conversation with his lyrics, and I was writing the woman back in to the rock song, if you will. But I also thought about structure. I thought about, is this a big song on the album or is it an intimate song on the album? And I tried to match my big songs to their big songs and my intimate songs to their intimate songs. Again, playing the role of the woman in the stories, but sometimes it was a conversation. Sometimes he would write about something and I would disagree. So but it was definitely a conversation and putting myself in the position of being the unnamed woman in the, you know, just it was, I was having fun with it, really.
Could I ask you for an example of where you were disagreeing with him?
I'd have to look at the albums. Where did I disagree? I'd have to look at the track by
Okay.
track. Trying to think what I disagreed about. We could totally get into this if
Yeah,
I had
no,
it,
that's okay.
but
I
it
can
was
move on.
30 years ago, so I don't really remember, but I can tell you all the places that I did agree. I mean, there were one of the things people have talked about is flower, and I released a song this year that could have been flower, was one of the songs I was considering to put against Let It Loose, you know? And Let It Loose is all about like, come on, baby, just, you know, let all these, you know, just let it go. Just be with me. I sexually, you know, like let it loose. And so I had a couple songs in that were, you know, like sexy, but not letting it loose. And so Flower, which earned me the title of, am I allowed to say this on radio?
Well, I will have to bleep it out, but you can say whatever you want.
Okay, which earned me the title nationally when the record got picked up by newspapers and stuff, the Queen, which was, you know, not like, but it was a song in keeping, it was like me measuring up to, you want it loose, you want it all, here it comes. And I just kind of let them have it with both barrels. And that kind of stuff's fun because it was so unexpected in this little girl voice to sing these dirty lyrics, you know, to see if anyone would catch on. I had a lot of fun with this stuff.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of the sound of the record and the juxtaposition of your voice and the content, I also feel like some part of the reason it was felt so subversive at the time was also that the production is very minimal. There's lots of room to really feel your voice and be within there. And even though, you know, it was the 90s and lo-fi was kind of chic, I think there still was an expectation that female artists, if they were ever in that realm, would be shiny and polished up and filled out with all sorts of flourishes. Talk to me a little bit about the production and if that was a conscious decision in terms of creating the setting for the actual material.
I think Brad Wood gets a lot of credit for keeping it minimal. He wanted to stay pretty true to my girly sound tapes, which were just me and a guitar. I mean, layered because we were four tracking, but and Casey Rice was the engineer. So they had a real idea as well of what would be cool and showcase me. But I think also I was coming from a DIY music scene. You know, we were post punk mentality. We were thinking not the big show, not the big, you know, production. Someone with something to say should get up on stage and say it. So that's sort of like the world I was coming from.
Right. Steve Albini watching by or
Well, yeah, yeah. Like he wouldn't give me the time of day, but I went to his shows. Yeah.
So finally, I know we need to wrap up because you have so many interviews to do today. But just speaking overall, revisiting something 30 years later is always going to have a mixture of emotions, I think. But in terms of Exile, it was landmark, it was searing, it was highly personal. So, what does it feel like to revisit that material? Not that you haven't played it in 30 years, but this tour is very much focused on this album. So, I would imagine it could be either, you know, it could be like flipping through a yearbook. Oh, remember those good times? Or it could be like, oh, geez, I'm glad I'm not 20 something anymore. um, what range of emotions do you have when you're occupying these songs again?
Well, the exciting thing about this tour is that I've brought on Kevin Newberry, who's a renowned theater director. So I have like a creative team that's going to take the story that I was just telling you about, like writing myself in, the interaction I gave them after each song. I told them like what was going on behind the scenes, what the relationship between the man and the woman was at each song. And they've devised like hopefully when people are watching this tour, they're gonna feel more of that story, that question, like how does this relate? How are you relating to the Rolling Stones? The male female perspective. Hopefully that's going to come to life a little bit more like richly on stage. And so the experience will be a little bit deeper into that story.
Oh, that's amazing. And now I'm even more excited for the show.
Me too.
Oh,
I'm a little nervous because am I going to remember what I'm supposed to do? He's like, are there songs that you don't have to play guitar? And so he's going to take me out onto the stage and have me do a few things. And I'm like, oh God, what have I taken on? But yeah, I think it'll be beautiful. I really do. And I think it's so nice. 30 years, it feels like a big thank you to fans in a way, like a full circle kind of thing. So, this will be the last time I personally perform Guyville like this production. So it's exciting and it's poignant.
wonderful. Well, we cannot wait to welcome you to Tucson. I think you're going to have an amazing time here playing a beautiful venue, the historic Rialto Theatre. And
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to speak today.
Thank you so much.
This has
Hopefully
been,
see you there.
yes. Oh, you definitely will. We've been speaking with Liz Phair on KXCI. Thank you.